Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. A few days ago, I did a video entitled Why We Don't Trust the Police. And this video that I'm doing right now is basically a continuation of that discussion. But instead of talking about it in broad terms, I'm going to focus on one particular situation. And that's the situation involving Eric Garner. And if you saw my last video, you saw the footage at the very end that showed an African-American man being forced to the ground by approximately 4 police officers. And one of the officers came behind him and put him in a chokehold. And you saw what happened in that video. And I may include a link in the description to this video. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail than that. So you had this brother who stopped 2 people from fighting. The 2 people left. They left the scene. And the brother was minding his own business shortly after that incident. And some police officers confronted him. They interrogated him. They asked him all kinds of questions. They were basically harassing him. And if you know about the situation in New York, you know that New York has a big problem with stop and frisk. There have been at least 2 lawsuits filed against the New York Police Department for their stop and frisk policies. And basically what you have is a situation where white police officers basically harass black men, stop them and frisk them for no reason. The overwhelming majority of the people who are stopped and frisked are innocent. Most of them are unarmed. They're not dealing drugs. They're just minding their business, trying to live their lives. And the police feel that because they have black skin or brown skin, that is a badge of criminality that justifies stops and frisks. So you have a situation where black men are basically being humiliated, punked out, and castrated by the New York Police Department. This is a pervasive problem in New York, and I'm sure it's a problem all around this country. And a couple of days ago, I was participating in a panel discussion about that whole issue of stop and frisk. And I wanted to talk about this Eric Garner case. But, since I didn't have time to do so during that presentation, I'm going to take a few minutes now and talk about it. So this brother was minding his own business. The people that were fighting left. And basically, it's important to point out that this brother played the role of a peacemaker. He was trying to prevent people from hurting each other, from hurting themselves, from causing problems, from fighting. So the police arrived late. They didn't arrive in time to stop the fight themselves. They didn't arrive to arrest the people that were engaged in the fight. Instead, they want to harass this brother. They want to interrogate this brother. So they eventually, start interrogating him, and then they start to grab him, put their hands on him. This brother wasn't violating any laws. He was minding his own business. He wasn't selling drugs. He wasn't armed. But these police felt the need to grab him, throw him to the ground, and one of the officers came behind him and put him in an illegal chokehold. And as this police officer was choking this brother, he kept saying over and over again, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And the man just kept choking him. The police officer just kept choking him harder and harder, applying more and more pressure until eventually the brother passed out and died. This is an ongoing problem of police brutality. It's constant. It never fades away. We are always hearing about a new case of police brutality. We have all these marches, rallies, prayer visuals, we have lawsuits, but the situation remains the same. Many people in New York City They voted de Blasio in because he promised to bring about better relationships between the police and the black community. That was his promise. That was one of his main points during the election. But this case of Eric Garner is another reminder that institutionalized racism cannot be changed overnight. It cannot be changed instantly with the election of any politician. It is something that will take a complete revolution in values, a complete revolution in institutions. It's almost as if these police institutions are designed to perpetuate racism, designed to perpetuate brutality against African Americans. People who know about the situation in New York and just know about life in general in America know that this is nothing new. When I was a kid, back in the day, we marched and rallied after the Rodney King verdict. We were outraged that police officers could brutalize a black man, beat and kick him over and over again on videotape and still get away with it. Because we are presumed to be animals, basically. That's what they see when they see a black man. They don't see a fellow human being. They don't see a brother. And when they see a black woman, they don't see a sister. They see us as animals. They see us as gorillas, as animals that need to be subdued. And that's how they treat us. That's how they treat Rodney King back in the day. And that's how they treated that brother Eric Garner today, just a few days ago. So I protested against the Rodney King verdict back then. And it seems like ever since then, the police brutality continues. The police brutality continued during my parents' time and our grandparents' time. When people were marching in the streets, it was the police that brutalized the demonstrators. The police. As I said in my last video, the police don't protect and serve black people. They abuse us, they harass us, they brutalize us. And this Eric Garner case is another example of that. That brother did nothing wrong. He didn't deserve to have his life snuffed out like that. And each and every one of us should be rallying for justice for this brother. The police officers involved in that incident need to be brought to justice. There is simply no rational explanation for their conduct. There is no justification for what those police officers, those stinking pigs did. They need to face justice. They need to be locked up for their crimes. But I just wonder how many times will we have to march? I mean, how many more prayer vigils will people have to have before the situation changes? Before it changes. We need to stand up against these police officers. We need to stand up against racial profiling. There is no reason why this country hasn't passed a federal law to deal with racial profiling. That is inexcusable. You know, as I've said about many other issues, when politicians come before us, we need to ask those politicians, what is your position on racial profiling? What is your position on passing a racial profiling act in Congress? We need national standards for policing. We need to have those if we are to change the situation in our communities. That brother's life was snuffed out, and we need to demand justice for the brother. Now that I've talked about that, you know, I want to go into a different aspect of the situation. You know, as I said, the brother was minding his own business. He had every right to be where he was, and the police had no right to stop him, to harass him, to arrest him. They had no right to throw that brother on the ground. They had no right to choke the brother. But I'm just going to lay out some information to the public about how you can avoid these types of situations. First of all, it's very important that we teach our young people not to argue with the police. Never to argue with the police. It's better to walk away alive and file a complaint than to end up dead. To end up dead. So never argue with the police. Never touch a police officer. Never do that. And it's important to make a mental note of the police officer's badge number. It's very important to do that. It's important never to run from the police under any circumstances. See, these police are looking for a reason to brutalize black people. They are looking for a reason to shoot you. Don't give them a reason. And, following this basic advice will prevent that kind of stuff from happening. And, you note the badge number. As I said, you need to note that when you encounter these police. And if possible, you should record your interactions with the police. Today is the modern era where people have cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone. We can become the watchman of the watchman. We can watch the police. We can monitor the police. We can bring the police to justice. Each one of us can. If we stand a safe distance from these cops and record what they do, so the world can be exposed to their inhumanity, to their brutality. So those are just some things that you can do. And it's also very important that when you interact with the police, never volunteer information, because they can always use that information against you. Even if you're innocent, even if you haven't done anything wrong, they can find a way to use that information against you. And it's important that if you are ever arrested, it's important that you invoke your right, your Fifth Amendment right, not to incriminate yourself. It's important that you demand the presence of an attorney or demand to see an attorney and to stop, engaging in discussions with the police, because they will find a way to trick you up, to have you confessing to something that you did not do. So those are just a few words of advice for you. I hope that all of you, heed that advice, especially the young brothers, so that they won't end up like Eric Garner. And, it's important that each one of us get involved, that each one of us speak out and condemn the crime that these stinking police officers committed in New York City. We need to demand justice for the brother, Eric Garner, and for all other victims